One of the things that separates the NBA from other major sports leagues, and for me personally, makes it so much more interesting, is how well it lends itself to discussion and debate. There's so much history in the league and so many different ways to look at the game that there's a nearly endless list of topics to argue about with friends, family, and coworkers. But no matter what, there are a few topics that will always lead to a dead end. Each side could come into the discussion prepared with a great argument, and they'll still never manage to get the other person to see it from their perspective. Whether that is a result of a strong belief that they're right, stubbornness, or just an inability to look at the situation from all sides, there's no budging people from their side of these debates. And that's what we'll be taking a look at today. My name is Tucker, this is Sporting Logically, and here are 4 NBA arguments that nobody ever wins. Alright, let's get the most obvious one out of the way. By any metric or logic, LeBron James and Michael Jordan are 2 of the top 5 best/greatest basketball players to ever live. They've each defined their own era of the NBA and were/are 2 of the most influential and impactful athletes of their time. And who is/was better might be the most heavily contested debate in all of sports. Nearly every media member, fan, and content creator seems to have what they think is a foolproof argument that they swear will convince the other side to see their position. Honestly, the list of points and counterpoints is endless. You could say that MJ defined a generation and helped make the NBA what it is today, while LeBron has sustained his excellence for longer than Jordan ever did already and is still playing at an MVP level in his 15th season. MJ had an all-time great coach while LeBron hasn't. James jumped around to build super teams to create his success. Jordan stayed with one team as long as they would have him. But what about those retirement years, huh, Mike? Yeah, but what about these rings? Oh yeah, well, Bron dragged worse teams to the finals than MJ ever did. Ha! 6-0 in the finals, so I don't want to hear it. Jordan played against guys that looked like they could have been substitute teachers on the weekends. But LeBron played in an awful Eastern Conference all of his career. Yeah, well, Jordan wasn't as complete of a player as LBJ is. Rang, 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 rang. And that's pretty much how every LBJ vs MJ argument goes. It starts off pretty civil, and then ends up sounding like 2 10-year-olds yelling at each other in a Call of Duty lobby in between matches. LeBron could average 60 points a game for the rest of his career, and there are still people in this world that wouldn't believe he's better than Jordan. And there are also people in this world that already crowned LeBron the winner once he won a championship for the city of Cleveland. People are just so entrenched in their opinion that there's no winning this one, no matter how hard you try. Related to the first entry, but not necessarily the same argument, depending on who you're talking to, who is the single greatest basketball player to ever live? Once MJ was done, a lot of people decided that he was the best they'd ever seen. Then, as we just talked about, LeBron came along and has thrown his hat in the ring. In between, we had Kobe, which is where people start getting into rankings of who should be ahead of who. There have been so many great players in the NBA that you'll likely never convince someone to change their top choice. Oh, MJ has all those championships? Yeah, Bill Russell thinks that's pretty cute. LeBron has sustained his excellence for so long? Kareem Abdul-Jabbar says hello. Then someone else chimes in with Wilt and Shaq were the most dominant players and Kobe was the most skilled. But hey, also don't forget that nobody stopped a healthy Larry Bird, while someone in the back chimes in with some random name from the 70s that they swear would score 50 points a game in today's NBA. Yeah, we all know that guy. The point is that just like every other entry on this list, everybody has their own opinion that's unlikely to change. Head over to Twitter with your best prepared argument, all the research in the world, traditional and advanced stats to support your case, and watch yourself continue to run into that brick wall on this one. Handing out the annual NBA MVP award is an extremely strange exercise. The argument that you'll never win isn't who should win the MVP in one specific season, it's what kind of player should win it. It stands for most valuable player, obviously, but it really could be named so many different things when you look at who has and hasn't won it in a particular season. Is it the most impactful player, the most important player, the player that had the best season overall, the best player in the league, or as the name suggests, the most valuable player? This is becoming even more difficult as in-season rest becomes more and more prevalent across the league, and many of the top players are coasting through the regular season in order to be fresh for the playoffs anyway. If we're being honest, there are really only a handful of guys that would be in MVP contention every year if they played to their capabilities for the entire season. But instead, they're actively limiting themselves from winning MVP awards in an effort to give themselves the best chance of winning a championship. Now, while that says more about the length of an NBA season than anything else, it also really tarnishes the award when you think about it. Should it go to a player on a mediocre team that drags them to new heights, or a player that has had a historic statistical season? What about the best two-way players in the league, or those that show great leadership in addition to their on-court capabilities? Who honestly knows? Because so many different precedents have been set to this point that everybody seems to have their own unique opinion that they won't budge on. For all the 2K simulations and statistical comparisons we have at our disposal nowadays, there's simply no way to compare two different eras of NBA basketball. The game changes so much and so quickly, which is one of the things that makes it so great, by the way, that even comparing the careers of players a decade apart is tough to do fairly. Some people love the faster pace and emphasis on spacing and shooting of the modern game, while others prefer the big man focused play of the past. Others long for the hard fouls and no layup rules of the good old days, while others prefer the freedom of movement and no hand-checking rules of today. There's such a generational preference to a certain kind of play in the NBA simply because that's the league that those people grew up on. My father's generation likely barely recognizes how the game is played today, with teams running fast breaks to get three-point shots rather than layups, while kids growing up today hardly know anything different. By extension, this also makes it extremely difficult to compare players between these eras of basketball that are so different. Some claim that LeBron and KD would score 50 a game against the lesser athletes of the past, while others point out that Wilt already did that and would continue to do so in the soft modern era. The idea that shooters like Steph Curry would get beaten up by the more physical game of the 90s and be much less effective is thrown out there pretty often as well. And if someone believes those things, you aren't likely to change their minds. Like I said, they grew up watching the NBA being played a certain way, and they're going to believe that that was in fact the best way to play. If 20 years from now the league is totally different, and everybody's fouling the crap out of each other at the rim, and nobody's shooting threes, as unlikely as that is, you better believe I'll be sitting there in my rocking chair talking about the good old days when Steph Curry would light them up from the three-point line. It's just how it is, and no amount of debating is going to change someone's mind that how it was when they grew up is the way the NBA should be played, and that the players of that era would crush the players of the modern era. And that's the end of the list. Thank you all very much for watching. Can you think of any other entries that I missed that should have been included? Let me know down in the comments section below. If you liked the video, then leaving a like rating is a great way to let me know, and if you'd like to see more videos just like this, then be sure to subscribe to Sporting Logically for more content every single week. Thanks again, and I will see you all next time.